So I was just asking this question on a few other bits of content I did about whether Declan Rice necessarily always starts for Arsenal, which is such a crazy thing to say about a £105 million player who's been so important for the team, especially last season. Like, I had him as one of our players of the season, potentially our player of the season, which again makes it sound like it's a ridiculous argument to even put forward. But I just wonder, right? I just wonder, what are Arsenal trying to do to keep getting to the next level? And is it getting to a point where no player feels like they can't be rested or rotated at some point, or even, dare I say, dropped if others are performing to that level? I mean, that's where we want the squad to get to, right? So I know that some people might see the title of this video or even watch this intro and think, James, you're crazy, I'm not even going to watch it. But if you are sticking with me, just please hear what I've got to say, because I think there's a compelling argument for why Declan Rice's importance can still be so high in this team, but doesn't quite need to be to the level that it felt like it certainly was last year. Let me give some context around this and why the management of Rice's minutes and having rotation and a good squad is a really important thing, especially in Declan Rice's position. I'll show you his minutes that he's played for Arsenal. Let's start last season in the Premier League, only behind William Saliba, who played every single minute of the Premier League campaign, which is incredible. Declan Rice there with 3,230 minutes. In context, that's 94% of possible minutes that he played for Arsenal in the Premier League last season. Extraordinary number. So we'll look at how he did the season before that for West Ham. As you can see, like we did with the previous screenshot from the Premier League website, we're showing you the top 10 most minutes played from that campaign, 22-23. Declan Rice with the most for West Ham at 3,272 minutes. Again, an incredibly high number. That's 96% of possible minutes that he played for West Ham in that campaign. Now, if I just show you Man City for context and Rodri, if you look at the 22-23 season, so that same campaign where he was playing for West Ham, Declan Rice, Rodri racked up 2,920 minutes, which is 85% of possible minutes. And then this last campaign with Rice at Arsenal, Rodri played the most minutes for City, but still didn't crack the 3,000 minute mark, playing 2,938 minutes, which is 86% of possible minutes. So again, to put that in context, if Rice is playing about 10% more minutes, that's nearly an extra 4 full 90 minutes of football per Premier League season. That's a lot of football that Declan Rice is playing, and more, even in the area of the pitch that you go, well, Rodri always plays, well, Rodri's always available and used. Yeah, but he's missing 15% of Premier League minutes. Now, of course, we know he's got an injury this season, so Man City can have to respond in a different way, but Declan Rice is playing even more minutes than that, and his durability has been fantastic, and I'm delighted that we've been able to play him almost every single minute and in every single big game we've needed him to. But that feels like a lot of football to be playing. In fact, no City player there, an outfield player, has cracked the 3,000 minute mark, which is interesting too. And I think the reason this is so important is A, to manage Rice's minutes and ensure that, we want him playing for the next 10, 15 years. How old is he? Maybe 15 is too far. We want him to play for the next 10 years for Arsenal, right, at a really high level. And it feels like managing his minutes now might be important. But of course, we're going for the Premier League title too, and you want your best players on the pitch at all times. I'm going to make an argument for why maybe not always having Declan Rice actually doesn't mean you're not necessarily getting your best players on the pitch, but we'll get onto that in a sec. Let me just touch on our wider competitiveness across all competitions as well, because Arsenal, despite having improved massively in the last 3 years, haven't really done the business in the other competitions. For context, our competition record for the last 3 seasons, where in 21-22 we were actually knocking on the door of a Champions League place, the 2 seasons after that we were knocking on the door of actually winning the title. As you can see, our best result there is a semi-final run in the Carabao Cup. We had a very favourable run, lost to Liverpool over 2 legs, but other than that, the FA Cup runs, round 3, round 4, round 3, go back to the Carabao Cup, round 3, round 4 after making the semi-final, and in Europe, a round of 16, a quarter-final in the Champions League is by far our best performance against Bayern Munich, and well, getting to the quarters was our best performance, and I give Arsenal credit for that. That was an improvement, no doubt, having not got past the round of 16 since like 2009 or something, but it's not a great set of results across all other competitions. And I do wonder if rotating and getting minutes in the other players a little bit more comfortably, saying, look, you might not play the Premier League game because we're going to bring in a few other players, but actually we'd quite like you to play some of the cup games, isn't a bad thing for ensuring Arsenal are competitive across all those other competitions too. Because in previous years, it's felt like we've had a first 11, maybe a first 12, 13, and then other players asked to do a job, and ultimately we've not really been able to do the business in those other competitions. This is why this 11 that went out against Bolton in the Carabao Cup, as you can see, with Rice starting in central midfield with Bukayo Saka in there, Jesus, Sterling too. You'd expect some of those players to come in because others like Martinelli and Havertz are performing well and are in the first 11, but Rice and Bukayo Saka are very much starters for us. And in the absence of someone who could have played in those positions quite comfortably, Arteta opted to use his best positions there, well, his best options in those positions there, which makes me really happy because it shows that maybe we're changing our attitude and our opinion a little bit on how we do in these other cups as well. So very much happy about that. But like I said, it's not just about managing minutes and competitiveness across all the other competitions. That means that maybe Declan Rice's minutes should be managed better. I genuinely think there's a tactical reason. I hate to say it. I think there might be a pure quality reason why maybe you opt for other options in midfield, and those options are Thomas Partey and Mikel Merino. Let me land. Let's go through them. I want to show you some stats, and it compares how they've done in the last 365 days according to FBref. Now, what we've got here is some possession stats. Declan Rice versus Thomas Partey. And Thomas Partey does come out for pass completion with an almost 1.1% better pass completion to Declan Rice's tally. He's also got more passes into the penalty area, 1.20 to Rice's 1.04. He completes more through balls with 0.28 to 0.02. And his goal creating actions at 0.35 are slightly higher than Declan Rice's 0.32. Let me show you how Rice compares to Merino for some attacking stats. Penalty, Merino coming out on goals penalty at 0.26 to Rice's 0.14. Shots on target penalty at 0.51 to 0.41, 0.18 to 0.08 for XG, and progressive passes received is up on 3.07 to 2.0. The kind of things you'd expect a little bit more from a number 8 than necessarily a number 6. Now, for everyone who's looking at that going, James, you've just cherry-picked those numbers, come on, that feels a bit harsh. You're absolutely right, and I did it deliberately. These are cherry-picked. And for those who are wondering, why have you done that? Let's be absolutely balanced and show you how Rice stacks up against Partey and Merino for some other key passing stats. As you can see, progressive carries, Rice is up at 2.35, much higher than Partey and Merino. Progressive passes, he's up there for 7.67 to the 5.77 and 6.66 of Partey and Merino. He's up there for progressive passing distance at 241 yards being the most, and he's up there for key passes as well. In fact, smashing it with some of those numbers compared to those two, and there's plenty of others, and the eye test will tell you that defensively Rice is the best option we've got. And look, there are loads of things that Declan Rice does better than Partey and Merino. The whole point of this video, everyone, please understand, is not for me to try and tell you that Declan Rice is not a very good player, or that Partey and Merino might be better, and that actually our future might be better without Declan Rice. That is absolutely the furthest thing from what I'm trying to tell you right now. I think Declan Rice has been every penny of the £105 million we've spent on him. I think he's a world-class midfielder. I think he's a leader in that team. I think he's a big game player, and I think he embodies everything we want our midfield and actually this new Arsenal to be. I love Declan Rice. He's absolutely fantastic. So why am I talking about this? Because there are things, and it's okay to admit there are things that Thomas Partey might do better than Declan Rice. I still think the eye test tells us that in possession we're a little bit smoother with Thomas Partey. We play out the press a little bit better, and we're maybe able to control the tempo of the midfield a touch better with Declan Rice, or even with Thomas Partey, or even Jorginho at the base of that midfield. Mikel Merino is a more natural 8 than Declan Rice, whether it be with the underlaps onto his left foot, whether it be dropping deep into possession and getting up into the high, the lanes of 5, and being a creative outlet and someone who can sort of make things happen in front of goal. It's okay to say that Merino and Partey might have strengths that Declan Rice doesn't. And so there might be games where you opt for those strengths, but more importantly, there might just be opposition, with all due respect to all teams in the Premier League, because they're all very good, where you just go, Declan Rice can sit this one out, because those two are still very, very good midfielders to have. I think Turkish put it brilliantly. 2 years ago, we had almost a very, very, very good campaign, an exceptional campaign almost, challenging for the title with Thomas Partey in there and Granit Xhaka, and Declan Rice was an Arsenal player at the time. So Arsenal have got to a level without Declan Rice. So can we sometimes try and get to that level and ensure we can manage his minutes too? And I think the best example of the point I'm trying to make is Phil Foden, because let me just remind you of this screenshot that we showed you earlier in the video, where Phil Foden last campaign played 2,865 minutes for Man City behind Rodri, becoming City's most important attacking player and becoming a player who actually ended up winning the Premier League Player of the Season, and he's been absolutely crucial. Well, what if I told you that Foden this season had only started 1 of City's 7 games? Now there's context, I think 2 or 3 of them he was either on the bench or not available for, but he's only started 1 Premier League game. So my question to all of you is, if we had Phil Foden, or actually let me put it this way, if we had the Premier League Player of the Year, would we ever dream of not starting them at this point in the season? No, like we just wouldn't do that. We'd say you've got to get them in the team. Somehow they have to start. But City have got to a level where they can start a home game in the title run in against Aston Villa last season with De Bruyne and Haaland on the bench. Why? Because it was best for the long term. And I say long term, the short to medium term really. But can Arsenal get that balance too? So let me get my message really clear. I love Declan Rice. I think he's in our best team. I do believe that. I think he's a world-class midfielder, and I don't think there's a better tackling or, let's say, defensive midfielder in world football. And I mean a midfielder who does the defensive stuff. I still think Rodri is the best six in the world. So I am not arguing for Declan Rice not being in Arsenal's best team. I'm arguing for us to find a way in which we manage his minutes better, throw different questions at the opposition, and actually are able to go, yeah, I'm looking at William Saliba, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, probably our four best players, and actually saying for some games, you don't need to be in this one. Wouldn't that be a privileged position to be in? But it's a position that Man City have got themselves into, and that is the benchmark. 4 Premier League titles in a row, that's what we're going for. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, people. Have I got a point, or am I talking nonsense?